Hi, this is Julie with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to make a beaded Kumihimo candy cane. So this could be an ornament, a decoration, whatever you want to do with it. It's really quite fun and easy to make. So you see it's actually going to keep its curved shape because in addition to doing traditional beaded Kumihimo, we're going to be placing a wire core in this as well. And we're going to be actually beading around our wire core. So I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. In terms of the supplies you're going to need, they're pretty simple. There are some E6000 to glue on your cord ends. I have some S-Lon in red. You're going to need a couple tubes of two different colors of beads. Here you see I've done red and white, and here I've done red and green. These are all Toho size 6/0 seed beads. You'll need these cord end caps, and you're going to need some wire. I've chosen red to match my S-Lon, and it's 18 gauge. So those are the actual supplies you need, and just a quick little tip here before I go into the tools you're going to need. This project to make a candy cane this size will take approximately a tube and a half of each color. So if you wanted to make 2 of these, all you'd have to do is buy 1 more tube of each color, and you'd have enough supplies to make 2, and of course just another set of these end caps, but you'd have enough glue, S-Lon, and wire. So those are the supplies. Now in terms of the tools, you're going to need a Kumihimo disc, you're going to need a Kumihimo weight, some bobbins, so these are Kumihimo bobbins, you'll need 8 of them because we're going to be doing an 8 warp braid, a cutter, a pair of scissors, a round nose plier, a ruler, a little piece of scrap paper or a post-it note, and some tape. So let's first start by cutting our S-Lon as well as our wire. So for the wire core, you're going to want 14 inches of wire. And it doesn't have to be exact because we are going to be trimming some off as we go. So there's our core. And then for the S-Lon, let me just move some of this other stuff out of the way. You're going to want 8 strands that are 36 inches long each. So there's 18 inches, 36, and we're just going to need 8 of those. All right, now that we've got our strands cut, we're going to need to load our beads onto our strands of S-Lon and our bobbins. So what you're going to need, I'm going to do this, lay this out so it's a little easier to comprehend. So I said we needed a tube and a half approximately. So I've already spilled out some of this tube, and that's almost half a tube. There we go. All right, so I'm going to put this tube aside that's half full because we're not going to need that. We'll save that for another project. And then go ahead and open up your other tube and add that to the pile. Now you could count these out if you wanted to. We need 4 approximately even lots, but I'm just going to eyeball it because we can always take beads off of a strand and add it to another strand at the end if we get to that point. So what I find is easiest, just make 4 little piles that look approximately the same. Even take a little piece of paper and scoot them. One looks like it has more than the others, just scoot a few extra beads over. Okay, that looks pretty good. Like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. So now we're going to load these onto 4 separate strands of the red S-Lon, and I'm going to do 1 to show you, and then I'm going to do the rest off camera because I know this is going to be a little bit of a longer video, and I'd prefer to save a little bit of your viewing time. So let me show you how to do 1, and then you can do the other 7 with the red beads and the green beads. So take a piece of tape and put it on the end of your strand, and then go ahead and tape that end into the inside well of the bobbin. Wind a few times. And you see I have a second little piece of tape ready to go. So I'm just going to put that on my bobbin for right now because I don't need it right this instant. And I'm going to be using just the end of the S-Lon as a needle, and it's pretty stiff. I'm going to put all the beads from one of my piles onto this strand of S-Lon. Now I use the piece of tape to hold the S-Lon in place inside the bobbin, just because when you start adding this many beads, it can get kind of heavy and that can cause the S-Lon to pull through and out of the bobbin. So it just is a good way of making sure your cord stays in place. All right, now that you've got all your beads, go ahead and let them slide down into your bobbin. And I would recommend keeping about half of them outside the bobbin and half of them inside the bobbin. And then do a couple more winds. And you want to make sure you have a decent tail. I'd say at least about 14 inches, just because you're going to be tying a knot on this end and you're going to be loading this onto your disc. So now go ahead, snap your bobbin shut. Now this other little piece of tape, I would recommend putting right where your cord exits, and that is then a stopper. Again, you're just trying to make it so that the beads, because they are heavy, don't pull out of the bobbin too easily. So there we go. They're ready to go. So now you'll want to go ahead and load up 3 more of the strands of red S-Lon with the green beads, and then do the exact same thing with the red ones. So you're going to end up with a total of 8 bobbins loaded with beads, 3 green and 3 red. And then I will show you how to go ahead and load them onto your disc. Our bobbins are all loaded, so now it's time to go ahead and place our threads onto our Kumihimo disc. So gather up the ends of your threads that are coming out of the bobbins. Just want to line them up in your hands. Don't worry if they get a little bit tangled. You're going to be untangling them here in a second anyways. Okay, so we've got all the ends. Now you're going to take them, gather them together, and just make a simple overhand knot, making sure you capture all of them, just like so, and pull that knot down towards the end of your ends. Okay, so now take that knot and thread it through the Kumihimo disc. There's that hole in the center, and you want to go from front to back. If you're not familiar with a Kumihimo disc, the front top side is the one with all the lettering and the numbers, and the back side is blank. So now you're just going to take your Kumihimo weight and pinch it onto that knot. Now you're going to line up your threads on the disc. You'll notice that along the outside edge of the disc are a series of numbers from 1 to 32. And all these little notches, and it's in those notches that you're going to put your threads. And we're going to start with the 32 up top and the 16 closest to us. And to get the spiral pattern that we have in our candy cane, we're going to line up a red thread, or I should say a thread with red beads on it, to the left and the right of the 32, and also to the left and the right of the 16. And then we're going to place the green beaded threads to the left and the right of the 8 and the 24. And there's those nice handy dots right there to kind of give you a good direction of where you want to start. This is going to be a standard 8 warp Kumihimo braid. And what I want to do is gather my thread. So I've got a green one. Okay, so to the left of that 8, actually it's to the right depending on which way you're looking at this. Here's another green one to the other side of that 8 dot. Here's what I mean by you're just untangling them. You're just kind of walking them out if they get a little bit tangled. Okay, so we've got more greens. So let's go to the 24 dot and put a green on one side of it. Okay, and then my last green one, the other side of the 24. And then a red one to the left and the right of the 32, and the left and the right of the 16. So if you were just going to make a Kumihimo bracelet, it is at this point that you would start your braiding. But since we are making this candy cane and we want it to hold its shape, we need to insert a wire into our knot right now so that we can actually braid around the wire. So this is something very different and new if you're used to making jewelry out of Kumihimo braids. You probably have not tried to braid around a piece of wire. So we've got our wire, we cut it in the beginning of this tutorial, and we're going to take off our weight, and we are going to slip the wire into our knot. You can even loosen up the knot a little bit if you need to. That's why it was just an overhand knot. So there it goes. It just went right through the knot. Now you can go ahead and tighten that knot back up. And also at this point, and this is when you need the round nose pliers, just make a nice, pretty loose, big loop at the end. And that's just so you don't accidentally pull your wire through the top side. So that loop will prevent it. Okay, so I'm going to adjust the tension again on my warps. So these are all warps. So these threads now, when you're braiding Kumihimo, are referred to as warps. And I'm going to stand up here. If you were doing this at home, most likely all of this would just be hanging in your lap and you wouldn't need to stand. But because I've got the table right here, I am going to stand. So that's that noise you probably hear in the background. And I'm going to feed my wire down through the backside. And I just want a couple inches sticking up top. And then you can see my hands through the hole here. I'm actually gripping the wire between two fingers. So now we're going to start our braiding, and we're going to do it just as if that wire was not even there. So we're going to start with the warp to the left side of the 16, and we're going to pull it up to the little slot on the left side of the 31. Now with our next warp, we're going to take the one that's to the right of the 32 and pull it down to the slot that's to the right of the 15. So left up, right down, and rotate to your next set of warp threads. So again, left thread up, right thread down, and rotate. Now, notice on this one, and it's the same as what I've been doing this whole time, but I do want to point it out. For the left thread that's going up to the left, I'm making sure I stay to the left of the wire. I'm not going this way. So I'm making sure I stay to the left of the wire and put it in its notch. Same thing with the right thread that needs to come down. So the right thread that's coming down is staying to the right of the wire and going into its notch. And then we're going to rotate again. So it is the same 8 warp Kumihimo braid that you might be familiar with. All that's different is we've got that wire that we're working around. So left up, right down, rotate, left up, whoops, left up, right down, rotate. And you want to do this for about 3/4 of an inch to start with. And when I say 3/4 of an inch, I mean the braid is going to start to develop here by doing this technique. And that's going to allow us to have a nice solid braid without beads on it to attach our cord into. So left up, right down, rotate, left up, right down, and rotate. This is very zen-like, it's very calming. Okay, so you'll notice I just put the left one up, and I just want to give you one quick tip here. If you needed to put down your work to go make dinner for a day, a week, whatever, always make sure you end with 3 cords up top, 1 down at the base. So you could technically put this down, it can get knocked around. And when you come back to it, you'll know that that section with the 3 warp threads needs to be up top, and you're just ready to pull the right side down. So it's a great way of marking your place. So I'm just going to keep doing this until I get that 3/4 inch of braid done, and then I'm going to show you how to add the beads. Now one thing I am noticing that's happening as I'm doing this is I'm getting a little bit tripped up on my wire. And it's because it has a curve in it. So just straighten it out if that happens to you. There we go. That should be better now. And then also I am still holding the wire. That's just at the beginning here until I get a really nice braid started. And then at that point I will release the wire. And what you can also do if you want for tension, and remember I stopped with 3 up here so I know where I stopped, you can actually put the Kumihimo weight back on and just be gripping the wire too. And that too also helps to keep the wire straight and hanging down at a nice straight line outside of your, outside that little hole. But again, I am still gripping it with my fingers. I just find that really helps to keep it from wobbling to begin with. Now we're ready to add our beads. So our technique is not going to change. We're just going to slip a bead under each warp thread as we do our braiding. So what I mean by that is here we're pulling up the left warp thread. Instead of just directly putting it up to the left, we're going to take one bead, slide it down and let it drop into the well. And then we're going to catch it under the nearest warp thread. And then just continue with the same technique where we just put it up to the left. So same thing with the right thread. So right down, but just grab a bead, let it slip and fall into the well, catch it under the nearest warp thread, and continue placing it where you would have placed it all along if you weren't doing beaded kumihimo. So rotate, grab a bead, let it slip in, catch under the warp thread nearest to it, and continue with your same technique. So there goes that bead. And it's really important that it does catch under the warp thread if you want a nice, neat spiral. I'm going to do a few of these so that you can see the pattern start to emerge. And it is nice not to be having to hold that wire at this point. You'll want to try to keep your tension fairly even as you're doing this. And a good way of doing that is just kind of checking your warp threads and making sure that your beadwork is in the center of that hole and just that all the threads are nice and taut. Okay, I want to show you what pattern we have. Then I'm going to give you a few extra pointers. And then I'm going to do the rest of the braiding off camera because it would just be way too long of a video if I did it all on camera. But I will come back and show you how to actually finish it off and add the end caps. But this is what we have. So you see that spiral pattern has started. Got the wire here. As you want to add more wire, because what's going to be happening here is you're going to notice that you have less and less wire and you're going to want more. You just can hold your beadwork and pull the wire so that you have more to work with. It's very easy to do. Then we've only added half of our beads essentially to the top side of each of the bobbins. When you get to the point that you need more beads, you've already got them strung. All you do is you take off that piece of tape if you chose to use it, pop open your bobbin, and just allow more beads to come out of it. Wind it back up as much as you're comfortable working with it and replace that piece of tape, and suddenly you have more beads. So like I mentioned, I do want to do the rest of the actual beading here, the braiding, off camera just because it will be too long. But it's the exact same technique that you're just going to follow until you've braided with beads 10 inches of your spiral pattern, and then it'll make a candy cane this size. So I want to show you where we're at now. We've got the 10 inches of beaded kumihimo finished. We still have that wire sticking out the base and then the wire up top as well. If you need to, you can keep pulling that wire as much as you need. You just carefully work it up. And at this point, we don't need any more beads, but we do need to do another non-beaded portion so that we have something to attach our cord end to. So I have left with the 3 strands up top, so I'm just going to complete this rotation by pulling this right cord down to the right without a bead, rotate, and then just follow the exact same technique of doing kumihimo, but without beads. So it actually does go a lot faster. to do this last part. So same process, I'm just not slipping those beads into the well. And again, you're going to want about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of non-beaded braid here at the end. Okay, here's what we've got, and that's long enough for us to work with. So at this point, you're going to take the Kumihimo weight off of the base, and you're going to clip it. You're going to pull this through a little bit. You're going to clip it to the end of your braiding, just to keep your braiding intact when you pull all your strands off the disc. So I'm actually able to sit down again now. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's pull all our strands off. You can gather them up and you can just cut them at this point. And all these bobbins you've been working with can just get set aside and used for your next project. And I do want you to take 2 strands though of the S-Lon that are left, and you're going to use these to finish your kumi end here. So the disc is done. So at this point, go ahead and curve your candy cane into an approximate candy cane shape. And you're just doing that because you want the wire to kind of curve and pull up, if it's going to pull up out of the end at all, before you finish the ends. So there we've got a nice candy cane shape. And to finish the ends, we're going to start with the one that doesn't have the weight on it. You'll notice that the cord end interior well is actually a little bit bigger than the braid, but that looks nice when it's finished because it's similar to the size of the thicker braid with the beads. But we do need to bulk up this section a little bit so that when we glue it in place, it really has something to grab onto. So to do that, take one of your scrap pieces of S-Lon, place it under the braid, and tie a surgeon's knot. And you're going to tie a couple more knots. And you're just bulking up that area. So you can put it under the braid again, tie another knot. There we go. So you just see that it's now thicker along that area of the non-beaded braid. I'm going to do it a little bit more. No science here. We're just adding a little thickness. Trim your ends. And then look at the length of your cord end and just make sure that where you did that extra thickening is not beyond the point where your cord end would be. And if it is, you could just scoot it up a little bit. So now because we actually have that wire core, we're not going to want to just use our scissors to cut through the S-Lon, which was what we would normally do if we didn't have that cord. Instead, we're going to want to use cutters. Go ahead and cut through everything at once. And then I'm going to grab a little extra piece of wire to use as an applicator for my glue. Oh, and this is a brand new bottle, so if you've not opened a bottle of E6000 before, there's a little point on the top side of the cap. You just turn it upside down, press over that seal, and that then opens up the glue. Okay, and put a generous amount of glue inside the well and really spread it along the sides. Now you're going to fit that cap over your cord. There we go. and really shove it in there. A little bit of glue comes out the end. Don't worry about it. Just wipe it away with your piece of paper. Okay, so that end is now finished. We want to do the exact same thing to the other end. Where's my strand? Here it is. Now you could also use a gold end cap here too. It would look quite nice. I have silver ones, but gold would be very pretty and festive as well. So we're going to do the same thing here. Now if you do have those straggly pieces, it helps if you twist the cap. There we go. And then I'll go back when that's dry and just trim off that one little piece. But we are now set, in our Beaded Kumihimo Christmas ornament that is shaped like a candy cane is now complete. So we got the red and white, and we have the green and red. You can find all the supplies for this, as well as additional Kumihimo projects and instructions at Beadaholique.com.